Is the new DC Multiverse Robin Reborn the Tim Drake we've been waiting for, or is it a disappointment? Stick around and find out if the teen wonder has been worth the wait. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation, where I review action figures and then articulate 5 points to help you decide if you want to add that figure to your collection. The 5 points I discuss are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and if you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube rigmarole. Starting off with the packaging, and this is our typical DC Multiverse window box. Down here we specify that this is Tim Drake Robin, and on the side we see that they're drawing this from Robin Reborn. It's interesting because I would have expected them to fold this into their Nightfall collection. On the bottom we've got the UPC for those using apps like Brickseek, and on the back is a curious choice for the artwork, mainly because it mostly covers the character. If I had one criticism in particular, I never cared for how the mask looks more like sunken in eyes. Even as a kid I never particularly cared for this cover, but there's nothing wrong with it. And for packaging, I'm giving Tim Drake Robin 1 whole point. Moving on to presentation, Robin stands at 6 3/4 inches. And yes, that does seem a bit tall. Why, he's practically the same size as Nightfall Batman. Scale has been a problem for McFarlane since the beginning, but this is ridiculous. Tim is supposed to be a teenager. It's about this time that I should probably take a step back and acknowledge that I'm being a little bit more critical than usual. As I've said about a bajillion times, Tim Drake is my favorite Robin, and I've been waiting for a good updated comic version of him for years. Oddly enough, this is the second time in 2023 that Todd's let me down with a Tim Drake. As fate would have it, a lot of my issues with this one are also problems I have with the new one. Doofy looking face, doofy looking face. Extraneous detail that the Tim Drake costume doesn't have in the comic. Extraneous details that the character didn't have in the comic. Overly bright cartoonish color scheme. Overly bright cartoonish color scheme. If you saw my Superpowers Tim Drake video, you'd know that a darker colored repaint's coming, and with the way that McFarlane's been going lately, I expect them to announce a gold label repaint of this, which will sell out instantly, but then you'll get the privilege of entering a raffle for the opportunity to buy it off of EQL. And then you'll probably not get it, leading you right back to eBay anyway. If you've watched enough of my videos, you know I'm not usually this negative, so let me take a moment to talk about the things I like. The cape is really good. They did an amazing job with the folds and the leather texture. There's even some extra crackles in there that feel really authentic. It really looks like they molded a piece of leather. I like his hair. He's got a good spiky flat top going. I'm really happy with the padding on the sleeves and gloves, and even the fabric texture is pretty nice. Unlike the Superpowers figure, they got the cut of his boot tops right. I also really like that they gave him the ninja toe. The logo is stamped on nicely, and even though I really wish they hadn't added all this extraneous armor detail, it is consistent with earlier DC Multiverse releases, so it does kind of look like he fits in. Again, until you realize just how tall he is. A lot to love, but also a lot to be let down by. For presentation, I'm going to divide the difference and give Tim Drake half a point. Moving on to posability, and Drake's head's in a dumbbell joint. He can look up this high, which is pretty good. Not much in the way of down, a little bit of tilt, and all the way around. Moving down, he can raise his arm 90 degrees, forward and back thanks to the rotator cuff, bicep swivel cleverly using the cuff of his sleeve, double jointed elbows with a great bend, and McFarlane style wrist balls. They can swivel, hinge side to side, or up and down. Shifting the torso, and I'm going to shoot straight with you. This is one of the most useless diaphragms I've ever seen. You see these giant armored ab pieces? Hunch them forward and they bang right into them. If you push the figure forward and then point down, you can get a little bit over, but really nothing to speak of. Using both the diaphragm joint and dumbbell waist, this is the farthest forward that he can hunch. Again, if they just styled him to match Nightfall, that wouldn't have happened. See what I mean? At the very least, he can arch back, but that draws attention to the ab armor also. Or I guess I should say the lack thereof. I don't mean to keep harping on Nightfall Batman, but he doesn't have that problem. Even tilt isn't as good as usual. That's because of this oblique armor. At the very least, he can twist. Below the utility belt, and Tim has typical McFarlane hips. He can only kick about 45 degrees, but he can at least do a perfect split. There is some twist in the hip, but of course there could always be more. No complaints at all with the double jointed knees. And then moving all the way down, Tim has toeticulation, and McFarlane ankles that swivel, hinge, and pivot. Torso aside, the articulation is fine, but that torso is needlessly frustrating. Even so, for posability, I'm giving Tim Drake 1 whole point. Moving on to playability, and Tim Drake comes with a trading card and a figure stand. If you want to learn more about the best Robin, pause here. Tim also comes with his trademark bow staff. It's the exact same one as the Red Robin figure, down to being painted silver. And he also comes with this batarang, which is just Nightfall Batman's batarang cast in black. Not gonna lie, I'm a bit conflicted. On the one hand, Tim does need his bow staff, and reusing it from another Tim Drake makes sense. And with so many Batarangs already in circulation, I don't really see the need for them to sculpt a new one, but I also don't really see the need for Tim to have one. If given the choice, I'd have much preferred for him to have come with an alternate pair of fists. Since his gloves are so unique, it's not like you can swipe some from somebody else. But playability is more than just accessories, it's also about how well your figure plays with others, and based on what we've already seen, I have a feeling we know where this is gonna go. For a tiny selection of my other Tim Drakes, and here's a 2003 version by Mattel, the DC Direct Titans version, the Mattel Multiverse Red Robin version, and then for a couple of McFarlane comparisons, and here's the Gotham Knights version, and then here we have the new 52 Red Robin. For a couple of other 90s legacy characters, and here's Con-El Superboy, I much prefer his red and yellow. Here's Kyle Rayner, my favorite Green Lantern, and Impulse, who's not only too big for the Flash, but is also too big for this already too big Tim Drake. Moving over to the Bat family, and here we have the Build-A-Batmobile and Titans Wave versions of Nightwing. Here's a 2-pack and 3 Jokers versions of Red Hood. They're all basically the same height. Next we have McFarlane and Mattel versions of Damian, and Art of the Crime and Batman Family 5-pack versions of Barbara. Of course, the most important thing is to see which Batman figures he scales with. In basic order of release, and here we have Detective Comics 1000. Next is Arkham Knight. Even though this isn't how Tim looked in the games, they do scale pretty well, and since both characters are kind of over-designed with their costumes, I think this could work. Here we have 3 Jokers. Tim's too tall, but at least this Batman's a bit taller. Next up is Rebirth, and if you ever wanted to see Tim being slightly bigger than Batman, well, here you go. Here's Batfleck from the Snyder Cut. If you wanted to repaint this Robin, I think he would go pretty well with this Batman design. Bringing out Page Punchers though, and once again they're the same height, so that's not gonna work. Here's Arkham City, which is at least a little bit taller. For those of you out there who swap limbs with 3 Jokers though, and this height difference is much better. Only problem is that your 7.5-inch Batman's gonna tower over everyone else. For those hoping to recapture the magic of the original Kenner Batman Returns line, here's Keaton from The Flash. Here's Hush, which is probably the pairing I'm gonna be going for. And lastly Nightfall, which once again is sadly too short. On the subject of Nightfall, and here's Catwoman, but for just a couple of other villains, and here's Rebirth and clown versions of the Joker, and longtime Robin nemesis Deathstroke. For a relative scale comparison, here's Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man. I think this would have been a perfect shade of red for Robin. And as always, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. You can use creative poses or angles to fudge him into your Bat family, but the truth remains that this Tim Drake is too big for just about any Batman in your collection. For playability, I'm giving this Robin half a point. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. I pre-ordered Robin from McFarlaneToyStore.com and got him for $20. To McFarlane's credit, they have been backtracking a lot on that $23 price hike, which is very much appreciated. There's a lot about this figure I don't like, but if I'd had to pay more for it, I would have liked it even less. For price, I'm giving Tim Drake 1 whole point for a grand total of 4 out of 5. Have I been overly harsh on this figure, or did I hit the nail on the head? Sound off in the comments below. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.